I call the Minister for Urban Infrastructure.
Well, thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Shadow Minister has told us that she is concerned about the risk to expenditure of the consequence of the recent HFC decision by NBN. She is about as credible a fiscal hawk as the member for Sydney, who claimed to be concerned about the cost of the same-sex marriage survey. The member for Sydney, of course, has spent her entire parliamentary career carefully and diligently watching taxpayers' money like a hawk. She doesn't want a cent spent that doesn't need to be spent, and so too, apparently, the member for Greenway has suddenly become a fiscal hawk, determined to not see one taxpayer's cent spent which doesn't need to be spent. She did gloss over the inconvenient fact. That the Turnbull government's NBN strategy is motivated by a range of factors, including rolling out the network more quickly, which it is demonstrably doing, and also saving $30 billion compared to the cost of the hopeless and incoherent plan that we inherited from the disorganised rabble on the other side of this House when they skulked out of office in 2013. Let's have a look, Mr Deputy Speaker, at the record of delivery we have seen on the National Broadband Network from the Coalition. Let's look at what was in the business plan that was released after we came to government and what was delivered. So the business plan said that by June 30, 2015, there'd be 1,093,000 premises passed by the NBN. The actual number, 1,165,000. So we beat the target on June 30, 2015. June 30, 2016, the business plan said that the network would pass 2,632,000 premises. The actual number passed 2,893,000. Again, 2016, we beat the target. June 30, 2017, the business plan said that there'd be 5,442,000 premises passed. In fact, the actual number was 5,713,000. Again, 3 years in a row, we beat the target, which is a stark contrast to what happened when Labor was in charge of this project, when year after year after year they missed the target, not just by a bit, but dismally. Dismally. By contrast, the Coalition has been delivering. And you can see the incredulity of Labor. They're just puzzled. They just don't quite understand why it would be that NBN would say, we are concerned about service levels on the HFC, so we are going to pause activations while we fix it. Because this whole idea of saying there is an issue, we want to make sure customers are getting the service we've committed to, so we are going to pause and fix it. We are going to stop and be totally transparent about what we do. You could not find something that was more diametrically opposed to Labor's values, because Labor's values are all about the spin, the promise, and they don't care about delivery. They have no experience in delivery. They have no capability in delivery. Do you know, Mr Deputy Speaker, it's instructive to go and look at Service Class 0. These are premises which are planned to be serviced by fibre but are not yet serviceable. And there's a number that are at Service Class 0 right now, as there have been for quite a period of time. And that's inevitable as you roll out a network. But it's instructive to look at the numbers, because at the end of 2016 that number was at 2.8%. At the end of 2014 it was 17%. So we've been bringing it down. It's gone up a little bit recently because of HFC, and we'll work on it and we'll get it down. But you know, it's very instructive to look at the percentage that was Service Class 0 in 2013 when we came to government, because it wasn't 2.8%, it wasn't 17%, it was 31%. And why did that happen? Because Labor were desperately trying to present the best story they could, given their abjectly poor performance, and they were determined to roll out as many premises as possible without caring whether you could actually deliver and what the customer experience is. We are focused on the customer experience, so focused that when there is an issue which is absolutely capable of resolution, as the company has made perfectly plain, then we pause and we make sure we fix the issue so people get the service standards that they expect. And you could not think of an approach which is more puzzling to Labor, which is more at odds with Labor, who just love the press release, love the announcement, they just don't care about the detailed work of delivery, and frankly they haven't got the skills and capability. And the proof of that, frankly, is not in the rhetoric. Proof of that is in the numbers. And let me remind the House of what I was pleased to share with the House a little earlier during question time, when we compare Labor's actual versus plan. In 2011, actual 10,500 versus a plan they claimed they were going to do 223,000. It didn't improve by the time they got to June 30, 2013. The plan said, Labor's plan, developed by Labor, under a Labor government, what they told the world in 2010 they were going to do in 2013. They said they'd have the network passing 1,700,000 premises. What they actually passed, 283,000. That is a hopeless performance. So it's no surprise that even objective sources, or sources that are not certainly necessarily barrackers for the coalition, such as ABC Fact Check, present an interesting description here. Because what is it that the ABC News had to say in an item headed Federal Election NBN Promises Past and Present in 2016? In 2009, Mr Rudd promised the NBN would be finished in 8 years. Instead, just 154,000 people could access the service when he left office in 2013. This is what the ABC said. This is what the ABC said. Not consistently, it must be said, barrackers for the coalition, but this is what they said. When Labor was removed from office, the NBN was running well behind its original schedule and was struggling to meet targets. That's Labor's track record. So the Shadow Minister has the temerity to come in here and talk about broken promises on the NBN. She needs to look in the mirror, because the broken promises have come from the Labor Party on the NBN, and it is quite instructive if you go and look at some of the things, the entirely inaccurate things that the Shadow Minister has said publicly. For example, in an interview on ABC's Late Line on 24th of October this year, she was admittedly under a bit of pressure, under a bit of questioning, actually a very good question. She said, when she was talking about the amount of funding that Labor had committed, quotes, "We always had peak funding of $45 billion," close quotes. That was her claim, totally at odds with the facts. Totally at odds with the facts. In Labor's NBN corporate plan of 2011-2013, they committed to $35.9 billion in capital expenditure and peak government equity at $28 billion. So when the Shadow Minister says publicly we always had peak funding of $45 billion, that is just factually wrong. But it's not surprising she's making factually incorrect statements when you look at how dismal their record is. Which brings me to an important question, Mr Deputy Speaker, a question which is one of those abiding mysteries. You could search for the answer to this question for a long time, and that question is, what is Labor's plan for the NBN? What is Labor actually going to do? We've heard the Shadow Minister telling us indignantly how much she disagrees with what we're doing with the HFC. Shadow Minister works hard to give the impression that if it was up to her, you wouldn't be using the HFC. Now, that's quite interesting when you look at Labor's 2016 election policy document on NBN, which says as follows: under Labor, the rollout of HFC will continue. Under Labor, the rollout of HFC will continue. It seems that the Shadow Minister has forgotten about that particular election promise in 2016, as she furiously gives the impression that Labor would do something different. But on that same interview in October, she was asked by ABC interviewer Emma Alberici, "So if Labor wins the next election, what is your intention? Do you go back to an all-fibre network?" And I must say the Shadow Minister's obfuscation, backsliding and general evasion was world-class. World-class. She said, "It's always been our preference for fibre and to have fibre as deep as possible into the network, Emma. But after being pressed for a little while, there's nothing we would want more than to have as much fibre as is possible." And then, finally, she essentially admits that they're making no commitments, no promises at all. Our commitment is that we want to see fibre expanded as far as possible. But, Emma, the reality is this: we need to be informed by the state of the network as it is in the event that we are elected at the next election, ... In fact, what she goes on to say is Bill Shorten has made it very clear we're not in the business of ripping up copper. So, despite the indignation from the Shadow Minister, there is no plan from Labor. There is no plan from Labor. They've got no alternative. But they do have a track record. And so when the people of Bennelong and the people of Australia look at the choice before them when it comes to the NBN, it's a very stark choice. The Coalition's consistent record of delivery and of rollout, and look at what Labor achieved when they were in government. They achieved very, very little, a dismal record, and they certainly don't have any plan at all. The choice is very clear. The coalition is delivering the NBN.